And Margaret with Raise the Vibration. Hi, everybody. Today we talk about an amazing concept that in being human, we must embrace the full gamut of our emotional system and all of the unattractive and gross and sticky emotions that we would rather not show others. If we deny those emotions, then we deny an aspect of this human journey. Thanks so much for joining me. Hi, Patty. Hi, Wes. So I started with posting a quote by one of my favorite authors. I first read Conversations with God almost 20 years ago, probably at this point. And Neale Donald Walsch is an extraordinary human being who had an extraordinary experience. And so if you haven't checked those books out, I put the link in the references in the notes from today. But today we're talking about that very quote that he says in this book, in the very first Conversations with God book, that says, "Perfect love is to feeling what perfect white is to color." Now, if you can jog your memory back to elementary science days, you'll remember that white is not the absence of color, but white is all colors together. It's pretty extraordinary to think about. So that color white encapsulates all of the colors of the spectrum of our visible field. And if we think about emotions, all of our gamut of emotions, from joy to rage, to love, to grief, and all that exists within that, if we can embrace all of those emotions, that is true love, as white is to embracing the full color spectrum. But this is one of the most challenging things that we address as human beings, because it's unattractive to look like you're enraged, or then you are in severe grief mode, or you're super sad, or depression. This is something that's wreaked havoc on our country, especially, and not being able to deal with emotional pain or physical pain in general. So how do we address the depressive thoughts or the emotions that we feel day to day, rather than try and just distract ourselves or cover it up or medicate ourselves? We do this in so many different ways. So we'll talk about that a little bit today, and then I'll teach you a couple of my tricks using oils and also just some cards to pull with the archetype to navigate this emotional journey. So just starting here right now in this live today, what is an emotion that you struggle with that you really don't embrace fully? What's an emotion that you might even see in somebody else and criticize? Like impatience, even. Impatience is a really frustrating one for me. When I see people being impatient, I'm like, just have some space for somebody to, but then I also deny that within myself. So what might be an emotion that you really get frustrated either with yourself with, or in somebody else? Can you get one? Just one. I'm sure we have a few. And when we deny one of these emotions in our own self, we deny the fullness of the expression of all the emotions. So if you think about the emotions, even like colors of the rainbow, like we were using this quote with Neale Donald Walsch today, and you think about a painting is nothing without the shadow aspect of it, or the other colors that are involved. So we might think, well, red is such a better color than brown, or that yellow is such a happier color than black, or whatever we associate just even with the color spectrum of the rainbow. And we equate the same way with our emotions. Like love is so much better than fear. Happiness is so much better than grief. But what if we were more curious about our emotional experience in this human journey and said, well, what's the value of experiencing deep suffering? As a little girl, I fell in love with the shadow aspects of life. I wanted to know. It's almost like when you go through those teenage angst years, you'll experience emotion and be like, oh, that's real. I don't know if you had that experience, but I certainly did. I should have known what my eventual journey would be in teaching, is really exploring those shadow aspects of ourselves rather than just denying them and always just wanting a happy ending. When I was a teenager, it's almost as if when I would watch a movie, if there was just this perfect little bow tied up at the end and this happy ending, it wasn't real. It's almost like I rejected the movie, or I rejected the story, or rejected the play, or whatever I was studying, because I wanted to really feel that essence of the true human journey. I knew that life was painful. Life, you experience suffering, right, guys? It's not just all bows. It's not just all happiness. And our addiction to happiness and thinking like that is the epitome of our human journey is the very thing that entraps us in suffering, and also robs us from true embracing, loving ourselves and other people. Yeah, they're okay as long as they don't do this. Or I'm going to be around this person as long as she doesn't do that. Or I love myself, but that part I'm not crazy about. Or I completely reject. I mean, we can be very vicious to ourselves, can't we? And it's not about buttering everything up. I love my dear friend Jill. Hi, Jill, if you're watching. My dear friend Jill was saying about the Thanksgiving meditation that I just led a couple days ago. Like, oh man, we can't pick everything and be grateful for it. I totally get it. I mean, we don't, to sugarcoat everything and to feel like, oh, everything is great and we're just going to pretend that we're all blessed. There is a real resignation in a lot of people when we're hearing this inundation of like, just be grateful for things. We get really annoyed by it because we have the full gamut of experience and we're like, just shut up, this sucks. Like, I don't want to experience this pain in my life. That's human, guys, that's human. So we don't want to just butter it up and sugarcoat the pile of grief and suffering by just pretending everything's okay, right? We really need to make sure that we go and explore what we're learning from that, because if we don't, it entraps us in habitual patterning that's unconscious most of the time, that really wreaks havoc on our lives. So what is an aspect of your life that you deny? What's an emotion that you deny? What's an emotion, maybe, sometimes, I know, especially as a woman, to really feel the depth of anger and that wrath sort of rage that we all have within us can be very looked down upon. Like, oh gosh, she's a bitch, or she's a tyrant, or whatever it is. But if we don't embrace the fullness of that, then we can't feel the softness and of the joy or the peace of the happiness. We'll just continue to try and run towards happiness and resist all of those unattractive emotions. And we'll get stuck because it's going to be like the gerbil on the hamster wheel over and over and over again. We don't fully embrace all aspects of that. So I just had the joy of seeing my dear friend Brian Golub last night in Jesus Christ Superstar. So shout out to Brian. You guys, this is the 50th anniversary of this incredible show. It's one of my favorites. I know some people don't like this show, but the music, I as a musician, I love it. So sorry if you're not a fan, but if you haven't experienced this, they're on their 50th anniversary tour. And originally this show was even just meant to be an experience, like what do they call it? An album, just a musical album, like an art piece rather than a musical. So it's an incredible production. And at the very end of the production, one of my favorite parts was the very end. Sorry if I'm ruining it for you, but go and see it. It won't ruin it for you. At the end, after the crucifixion, they have Jesus sitting on one side of the cross, and after he's taken down, and then reality is gone beyond, or what, I can't think of the word. And Jesus is sitting there, and he's afterlife, in the afterlife. And then you have Judas on the other side of the cross, and they look at each other like, we needed each other to go through this experience. And while that might be a little bit confrontational, or gosh, I'm at a loss of words today, but while that might be a little bit alarming for some people to say, well, no, Judas he played the evil guy and he was the betrayer and all this. Could Jesus have been crucified without Judas? And it was a very interesting choice at the end of this show, and quite beautiful to recognize the villain, or the archetype, or the shadow aspects, or the darker emotions of this human journey. So I even see one of my beautiful teachers, one of my theater teachers, Mr. Paris, it's so good to see you here. He was one of my drama teachers, and going through and studying about the gamut of human emotions, especially as an actress in high school and college, you begin to learn, like, you can't have the hero without the villain. So you can't have happiness without the grief. So when we think about these emotions and we think about this quote by Neale Donald Walsch that says, perfect love is to feeling. Perfect love is to feeling. Like perfect white is the color, it teaches us that perfect love in our lives embraces the gamut of human emotions, all of them. And if we can make space for others in our lives to experience them in their fullness, then we get to experience them in the fullness of their greatness and their suffering or their pain. We can't have one without the other. Cool? So I love these oils, peace. There's emotional oils you can put on yourself to see if you can find more of a connection on a deeper level to the fullness of your emotional body. I put some notes in the I put some links in the notes there for today. But also I wanted to pick 2 cards for us to kind of drive this home and to get some guidance of how to more fully embrace our human journey and the fullness of being human. So, oh, hello. Oh, I love seeing all your faces. Join me. Hi, guys. Thanks so much for joining. So how can we more fully embrace the fullness of this emotional body of ours? Because if we deny that anger, as yoga teachers, I know those yoga teachers watching out here, we know that human emotion gets trapped in the hips, gets trapped in the jaw, when it gets tightened, it gets trapped in the heart, it gets trapped in different areas of the body, and then we have to work them out. So to release them and just to allow them and not demonize those emotions is so critical to our health and well-being as humans. So let's pick an archetype for today. Drum roll. What's it going to be? Ooh, interesting. What does this mean? Let's see. The gambler. So with archetypes, if you're new to working with them, an archetype has a light aspect and a shadow aspect. So these are like characters on the stage of our life. So the light attribute of the gambler is a willingness to follow intuition, even when others doubt you. And then a shadow attribute is relying on luck rather than hard work. So this gambler, this is very interesting. This is coming up today. Gambling, like willingness to follow your intuition, willingness to trust your emotions. We know that our emotions also serve as a guidance system for us. So if we're cutting off the negative emotions, if we're feeling like, oh, this doesn't feel right, and we don't listen to it, then we walk into circumstances and scenarios that are not good for us. If we listen to our emotional guidance system and that gut feeling that's saying, this isn't right, whether in a relationship and we're not addressing something that is percolating within, or if we're in a job or if we're in any circumstance. I mean, so many people have been victims of perpetrated violence will say, I knew something was off, but I wasn't listening to it. So this intuition, really the gambler, listening to that emotions, really trusting in that so that we can be guided by that emotional guidance system. That's kind of a really cool archetype to pull today. And the shadow attribute, relying on luck rather than hard work. We know that this human journey is hard, you guys. It's hard. It's hard work to move through this experience of pain. Some days I'm like, God, this is so hard. This is hard. And sometimes we feel that feeling of just wanting to give up. But we have to know that in walking this path and really moving towards alignment with divine guidance, with God, with the fullness of who we are, with the purpose that we have for this life, we need to do the work. It's a practice, a day-to-day practice. So today and the week ahead, practice embracing that emotional guidance system, blah, 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 and practicing emotion, like embracing the fullness of your emotional journey and others. The more you do it for yourself, the more love and acceptance you have for those in your life. So they'll thank you. All right, let's pick a goddess tarot card for today. Ooh, interesting. All right, Matt. Fairness. So this is a goddess that teaches about fairness, and reminding us that the situation will be handled in a fair and just manner. I think this is a great card to pull for emotions too, because don't we feel sometimes when we go through life and we feel suffering inflicted by others or circumstances, like life isn't fair. It's not fair, or she should be punished, not me, or he's the one who's hurting me, so why isn't he? And we entrap ourselves in this game of like, life isn't fair and we're the one who's keeping score, we're the judge. If we can let go, truly let go of that judge archetype within, then we can just trust God has it handled. The universe has it handled. Karmic law has it handled. That the perpetrator of pain and suffering is the one who's feeling that from within. All right, so you guys, I hope that helps today. Have a beautiful, beautiful week. I love you all, and thanks so much for joining. And until next time, keep raising the vibration. Bye.